Every trader knows the feeling. The charts are slowing down, the candles are shorter, the day is nearly over, but your mind is louder than ever. You've been patient all morning, disciplined all afternoon, and then as the final hour begins, everything starts to unravel. The fatigue builds, the focus fades, and that quiet voice whispers, "One more trade." We call it the last hour illusion, that strange blend of exhaustion and fear of missing out. It's not about the market anymore. It's about you, your need for closure, your hunger to prove, your resistance to letting go. This is last hour psychology, fatigue, and FOMO, a reflection on the moment when traders stop reading the market and start confronting themselves. Because in the final hour, the question isn't what's the setup, it's who's in control, the strategy or the emotion. The clock was inching toward 3:30. The air in the room felt heavier than usual. The charts were moving slower, yet somehow my mind was moving faster. That strange tension between exhaustion and urgency, I felt it many times before. The final hour of trading. The hour that looks quiet from the outside but burns loud inside your head. I'd been trading all day, focused, disciplined, careful. But something changes in that last stretch. The fatigue begins to whisper. It tells you that one more trade might make the day worth it. It tells you that sitting still means missing out. And before you realize it, your clarity has turned into craving. They call it FOMO, fear of missing out. But it's not just fear of missing a trade, it's fear of missing redemption, the chance to rewrite the story of the day. And when you're tired, that fear doesn't feel like emotion, it feels like logic. I stared at the charts. A setup appeared not perfect, but tempting. My rational mind said wait, my tired mind said now. And fatigue always has a way of sounding convincing, because fatigue doesn't shout, it persuades. It makes you believe that rest is weakness and action is control. But in trading, it's the opposite. The first mistake of the last hour isn't a bad entry. It's the belief that your mind still has fuel. You think you're reading the market, but really you're reading your emotions projected onto it. Every flicker on the chart starts to mirror your state of mind. When you're calm, you see patterns. When you're drained, you see possibilities, because the mind tries to fill its own emptiness with hope. I remember feeling my shoulders tighten, my breathing shallow. The monitors glowed brighter against the fading daylight. That glow has a kind of hypnosis to it, as if the screens are whispering, "Don't stop yet. The market's still open." And so is your ego. That's what makes the last hour dangerous. It becomes personal. It's no longer about opportunity, it's about identity. You want to prove you can finish strong. You want to prove the earlier losses didn't define you. You want to close green to walk away feeling like the day was worth it. And that desire turns the market from a teacher into a mirror. The closer the clock gets to the bell, the less you trade the market, and the more you trade your own reflection. Fatigue distorts perception. It doesn't just slow your reaction time, it reshapes your emotional landscape. You start seeing meaning where there is randomness. You call it intuition, but it's exhaustion. You call it opportunity, but it's restlessness. And in that restlessness, even silence feels like loss. I placed the order anyway. Quick, impulsive, almost automatic. It wasn't my system, it was my need. The trade was live before I'd even processed the decision. And in that split second, I felt both alive and ashamed. Because deep down, I knew what this was not an attempt to win, but an attempt to end the discomfort of waiting. That's what fatigue does. It doesn't push you to trade. It pushes you to escape the silence of discipline. The trade moved against me, not sharply, not brutally, just enough to sting. The kind of pain that's more psychological than financial. The kind that whispers, "You knew better." And it was right. I did know better. But knowledge without energy is like a compass without light. It points the way, but you can't see where to step. As the minutes slipped away, I sat there in the fading glow of the monitors, watching the loss settle into the P&L. It wasn't large, but it carried weight. Because it wasn't about money, it was about what it represented the moment fatigue beat awareness. That's the real loss every trader faces in the last hour. I took a breath, long, heavy, deliberate. The trade had closed, but the lesson was still open. Why do we push ourselves hardest when we have the least clarity left? Why do we mistake motion for mastery? Maybe because the last hour isn't about the market at all. It's about our relationship with endings. We don't like unfinished stories. We don't like red days. We want to leave the screen feeling complete, but completion and control are not the same thing. The market closes every day. Whether you find closure or not is up to you. That's when I realized something subtle yet powerful. The most dangerous moment in trading isn't the first trade of the day, it's the last. Because by then your body is tired, your mind is foggy, and your ego is loud. And the voice of discipline grows quiet just when you need it most. I looked at the time. 15 minutes left until close. The temptation still lingered, that whisper of one more shot. But I didn't move. For once I just observed. The market danced. I didn't join. I let it move without me, and in that stillness I felt a rare kind of peace, the peace that comes not from profit, but from presence. That was the first time I truly understood what the last hour is about. It's not a window of opportunity, it's a mirror of awareness. It shows you who you are when the energy is gone, when the outcome can't be forced, when all that's left is choice. And in that choice between impulse and patience, your trading psychology reveals itself. When the session ended, I didn't feel relief. I felt emptiness, that strange quiet that follows a day of constant noise. The chart stopped moving, but my thoughts didn't. They kept replaying the day, searching for meaning inside every trade, every click, every small hesitation. That's the aftertaste of fatigue. It lingers long after the last candle closes. As I stared at the flat screen, I realized how deceptive exhaustion can be. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in silently disguised as determination. You think you're being disciplined by staying longer, watching harder, pushing through. But discipline without energy is just stubbornness in disguise. The market doesn't reward effort. It rewards awareness. And awareness fades the moment fatigue takes over. I used to believe the last hour was where strong traders prove themselves. But now I know it's where most traders lose themselves. It's not a test of skill, it's a test of surrender. Because in that final stretch when your body is drained and your willpower is low, the market tempts you with illusions. It whispers that one last move could change everything. And that whisper is where most accounts bleed slowly, trade by trade. Fatigue and FOMO are twin thieves. One drains your judgment, the other hijacks your emotions. Together they blur the line between rationality and impulse. You start to believe that missing a move is worse than losing money. You start to trade for closure instead of clarity. And when you chase closure, you trade not to win, but to stop feeling incomplete. That realization hit me harder than any loss, because it wasn't about the charts. It was about me, about the part of me that couldn't accept silence, couldn't sit still, couldn't let the day end without fixing it. Trading exposes your relationship with control. And in that last hour, mine was laid bare. When we're fresh, we follow systems. When we're tired, we follow emotions. That's the pattern. And unless we train the mind to recognize it, we'll repeat it forever. Fatigue makes us mistake urgency for opportunity. The clock becomes the enemy. Every tick feels like time slipping away. You start to think, if I don't act now, I'll miss the move. But the truth is, You're not missing the move, you're missing your calm. I began to see that the end of the day amplifies whatever emotion you've suppressed. If you were frustrated earlier, the last hour magnifies it. If you were afraid, it becomes panic. If you were greedy, it becomes desperation. The final hour is the mirror that reveals everything you haven't managed emotionally during the day. That's why awareness is the real closing bell, not the market's yours. The moment you recognize that your clarity is fading, that's when your day should end, not when the exchange decides it's time, but when your mind does. Because mental exhaustion doesn't just lead to bad trades, it teaches your subconscious that rules are optional. And once that pattern is learned, it's hard to unlearn. I started writing small reminders on my monitor, short phrases. End strong by ending early. Fatigue isn't data. Stillness is a position. At first they were just words, but over time they became anchors, small moments of mindfulness in the storm of noise. I began to notice how the body signals what the mind denies. The tightness in the shoulders, the way breathing becomes shallow, the subtle shake in the hands after a long session. All of them warning signs telling me to stop long before the charts do. The market doesn't need another trade from you. It needs a clearer version of you. And clarity can't exist in exhaustion. So I started doing something radical for a trader. I walked away, 30 minutes before close every day, no matter what. At first it felt like weakness. I worried that I'd miss something big, some breakout that would make the day. But over time I realized I wasn't missing profits. I was avoiding mistakes. And those mistakes, had I made them, would have cost more than any missed opportunity. Walking away early became an act of discipline, not defeat. It was my declaration that I no longer needed the market to give me closure, that I could give it to myself. That's the psychological shift few traders ever make to end the day intentionally, not emotionally. Now, when the last hour arrives, I see it differently. It's no longer a battlefield, it's a mirror. It reflects everything you've done that day, your patience, your impulses, your awareness. And it asks a single question: will you repeat your pattern or will you recognize it? The truth is, the last hour doesn't test your strategy. It tests your self-control. It asks whether you can let go not of the market, but of your need to control it. Because the deeper truth behind FOMO isn't fear of missing out on trades. It's fear of missing out on certainty. And certainty doesn't exist here. Only awareness does. That's the quiet paradox of trading. The harder you try to control the market, the more it controls you. The more you surrender to awareness, the freer you become. The last hour doesn't need to be your enemy. It can become your reminder that presence is the only true edge and fatigue is the shadow that steals it. With time and reflection, I began to see that the last hour wasn't my enemy. It was my mirror. It showed me the version of myself that still wanted control even after the energy to manage it was gone. Fatigue exposes truth, and FOMO reveals attachment. Together they show you what part of your identity is still bound to outcome. Every trader has a last hour. It may not be on the clock, it may come after a long week or a long losing streak, but the experience is the same. You reach that moment when logic weakens, emotion rises, and the urge to act feels stronger than the capacity to think. That's when you meet yourself. And that meeting is the real practice of trading psychology. The market doesn't teach you who you are during the win. It teaches you in the fatigue, in the silence, in the pull, to act without awareness. Those are the moments that sculpt discipline into wisdom. The goal isn't to eliminate fatigue or FOMO. That's impossible. The goal is to recognize them, to see them arrive, and to choose presence anyway. So I started to build small rituals into the final hour. Not strategies, not setups, rituals. A glass of water, a deep breath, a minute of stillness with my eyes closed. These weren't random actions. They were signals to my nervous system, reminders that the market doesn't define when I stop. I do. That's what mastery looks like in practice. The ability to pause when everything inside you screams to move. I also began to journal differently. I stopped writing about trades and started writing about states of mind. What did I feel before placing that trade? What emotion was driving me? Was I curious or anxious, calm or desperate? And slowly I began to map the inner landscape of my own psychology. I realized that fatigue wasn't the problem, unawareness was. Because when you're aware of fatigue, it becomes information. When you're unaware, it becomes identity. I learned that awareness is the antidote to both fatigue and FOMO. It doesn't remove them, it transforms them. Fatigue, when met with awareness, becomes a signal to rest. FOMO, when met with awareness, becomes a signal to reflect. Both emotions lose their power the moment you stop fighting them. The trader who can sit with discomfort without needing to fix it, that's the one who lasts. There's a paradox in trading that few people talk about. The better you become, the more subtle your challenges get. Early on, the battle is external, finding entries, building strategy, managing capital. But later, when you know all that, the real battle turns inward. It's between your discipline and your desire, your clarity and your craving. And the last hour exposes that balance in its purest form. I began to notice a pattern. The days I walked away early, I slept better. The days I forced a last-minute trade, even if it worked, left me restless. Because success achieved through fatigue doesn't feel like success, it feels like survival. And no trader can sustain a career built on survival. Over time, I learned that my performance wasn't tied to how many hours I traded. It was tied to how many moments I was truly aware. Quality of mind replaced quantity of trades. That shift didn't just improve my results, it changed my relationship with the market entirely. The market became quieter, not because it changed, but because I did. The noise was still there, but it no longer lived inside me. I stopped chasing the final move because I understood something deeper. The move that matters most is the one you make internally. The decision to stay calm when urgency arises. The decision to rest when ego demands more. The decision to choose clarity over closure. That's what trading psychology truly is. The ongoing practice of noticing your impulses without obeying them. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about seeing emotion clearly enough that it no longer owns you. The market doesn't need you to be emotionless. It needs you to be aware. Awareness turns fear into data. Awareness turns FOMO into feedback. Awareness turns the last hour from a trap into a teacher. When I sit at my desk now and the clock nears close, I smile a little because I know what's coming. The whispers, the temptation, the illusion of one more chance. And I meet it like an old friend, familiar, predictable, powerless. I thank it for the reminder that I'm still human, still learning. Then I close the charts, not out of defeat, but out of respect for my own mind. That's the moment of quiet mastery, when you realize that discipline isn't punishment. It's self-care disguised as restraint. It's the ultimate form of compassion for your future self. Because every time you choose clarity over chaos, you protect the trader you'll be tomorrow. The last hour taught me that trading isn't a battle to win. It's a mirror to understand. Fatigue and FOMO aren't enemies, they're invitations. Invitations to look within, to see where you're still holding on, to notice what you still fear losing. Once you can see that clearly, the last hour stops being a threat. It becomes a teacher whispering, "End strong," by ending aware. It took me years to understand that the market was never trying to break me. It was trying to reveal me, to show me what I refused to see when things were calm, my patterns, my cravings, my fatigue, my fear. Every chart was just a reflection of the same question. Can you stay present when everything inside you wants to react? The last hour is not just about trading, it's about endings. How you handle the end of a day often mirrors how you handle the end of anything: a loss, a relationship, a season, a version of yourself. Fatigue makes us desperate for closure. FOMO makes us afraid of missing the next beginning. And somewhere between those two impulses lies the only thing that matters: awareness. I started to see the market as a daily meditation. Each session begins with possibility and ends with truth. The truth of how well you managed your mind when the noise grew louder than your logic. The truth of whether you acted from clarity or compulsion. And the last hour, that narrow strip of time, became the purest mirror of my evolution as a trader. When I look back now, the most valuable trades weren't the profitable ones. They were the ones I didn't take. The trades I walked away from when everything in me screamed to act, because those were the moments I wasn't trading the market, I was training the mind. And that training compounds. Just like money grows through interest, awareness grows through restraint. Each moment you choose stillness, the next moment becomes easier. That's the beauty of this craft. It doesn't just teach you how to make money, it teaches you how to know yourself. It strips you of illusions, one trade at a time. And if you listen carefully, you start to hear the rhythm beneath the chaos. The market breathes. You breathe with it. And somewhere between those two breaths, you find the balance that every trader is searching for. I used to believe the edge was something you built, a strategy, a setup, a system. Now I believe the edge is something you become. It's not external, it's internal. The more aware you are, the less you need to predict. The more disciplined you are, the less you need to control. Because awareness turns uncertainty into information, and information into peace. That peace is what I now chase, not the thrill of the last hour move, but the calm of ending the day in alignment. To walk away, not because I'm done trading, but because I've already learned what I came to learn. To end the day with energy left for life beyond the charts. To let go of the constant need to fix, to prove, to make perfect. Because the truth is, no day will ever be perfect, only conscious. Every trader must choose what kind of peace they want. The temporary peace that comes from a lucky win, or the lasting peace that comes from a calm mind. The first fades as fast as the candles change color. The second stays long after the screens go dark. That's the kind of peace I now build my process around. So when fatigue shows up, I greet it. When FOMO whispers, I listen but I don't move. They're reminders, not enemies. They're signposts that say, you've reached your limit. And reaching your limit is not failure, it's awareness. It means you're human. It means you've grown enough to notice the difference between impulse and intuition. That's the quiet mastery hidden in the last hour. It's not about squeezing profit from the final move. It's about extracting wisdom from the final moment. The day always ends. But how you end it defines what kind of trader you'll be tomorrow. When the clock ticks to 4, I close the charts. The monitors fade from red to black. And in that stillness, I smile. Not because I won or lost, but because I was present enough to know the difference. That's all this game ever asks of us presence: to see clearly, to feel honestly, to act consciously, and then to stop. Because mastery in trading, like mastery in life, is not about endless motion. It's about knowing when enough is enough. It's about leaving the screen while you still have awareness so that tomorrow you can return with clarity. That's the lesson of the last hour. Not how to catch the final move, but how to recognize when the move is within you, from exhaustion to awareness, from fear to acceptance, from noise to stillness. The market closes every day, but the mind that learns to close with it, that mind never stops growing. And that, to me, is the real profit. The next time the last hour comes, and it always will, notice how it feels. Notice the restlessness, the tension, the need to finish strong. That's not the market calling you. That's your mind craving closure. When fatigue whispers, keep going, and FOMO says, don't miss it, pause. Because awareness in that moment is more valuable than any trade. The market will close. The candles will fade, but your awareness, that's what carries over to tomorrow. And if you can end the day clear, you'll start the next one strong. This is mind over markets, where trading isn't about predicting, it's about perceiving. Not about control, but clarity. Because in the end, the greatest trade you'll ever make is the one between noise and awareness.